Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 80th episode of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, where we bring you the UK perspective to the US rock fan and vice versa. And longtime listeners of the show know that last week's episode was very special to us because we hosted the one and only Jeff Downs of the Buggles, of Asia fame, and of, yes, currently about to embark on their Close to the Edge 50th anniversary tour. And we were, of course, very excited to talk to Jeff and had the opportunity to talk to him right after the loss of legendary drummer Alan White, who had just passed away days before our conversation with Jeff. And, of course, now, yes, it's dedicating the Close to the Edge 50th tour to Alan, which was the first tour he ever performed with, yes, 50 years ago this year. And, of course, we talked a little bit about the new Asia in Asia box set commemorating that special night in Tokyo in 1983 where Asia broadcast live via satellite on MTV, the first concert of its kind ever broadcast. And that box set does come out June 10th. And for those Asia fans out there, you're going to love this episode too because we've got a very special guest, Carl Palmer. That's right. Of Emerson, Lake and Palmer fame and founding member, drummer of Asia. He's going to come on and talk about that night and the box set a little bit and some of the other details of his career, which we're really excited about. Two big Asia fans getting to have two Asia founders on the show back-to-back in as many weeks. It's really great, and we couldn't do it without our Pantheon Podcast Network brothers and sisters. For those of you who know the show know that for the last few months, we have been members of Pantheon Podcast, and you can check out at Pantheon Pods or pantheonpodcast.com about 100 different amazing music shows, not all rock and roll, but great music shows, every genre. There's definitely something for you in there, and I highly encourage you to go check it out. And we love to give shout-outs to our friends and family, like Jay Scott at the Hook Rocks, who has an amazing show. He's breaking new artists, but he's also having some classic artists that you know and love on there, has great guests and is a great show. Comes out 2-3 times a week. Also want to give a shout out to Paul Stevenson at Vintage Rock Pod, who now has a daily show, This Day Rocks, and the Wolf has appeared on that a few times. We'll be on June 9th as this show is released. And he's been on our show recently about Oasis, which has been a popular show as both Liam and Noel Gallagher are touring the UK this month, this June. And I'm going to go see Noel here very soon. But we have to talk about some very tragic news, a very sad and somber time in the Pantheon world. Everyone here knows that we're big fans and friends of Tom and Zeus of the Shout It Out Loud cast. They've got the best Kiss podcast in the whole world. They were recently on our show talking about revenge. And I got to tell you, they're super good to their fans and their listeners. And we were fans and listeners at the beginning, and they were always very encouraging to us, especially Tom, who I reached out to several times as we were growing the Ugly American Werewolf in London podcast. And he was always just giving us advice and helping us move forward. And unfortunately, Tom had a very serious tragedy affect him this week. He lost his wife, Bridget. She had a brief illness, but unfortunately she succumbed to it. It's very sad, and my heart goes out to Tom. I don't know him that well. I've really only spoken to him once via Zoom, but from what I know of our limited interactions in his show, he's a tough guy with a big heart, and there's nothing I can say or do to make this time in your life any easier, Tom. Just know that you've got a lot of friends and fans all around the world who love you, and I'm one of them. So is Action Jackson. And we're thinking about you, and we are grieving with you. Only hope the best for you and your family moving on. A really sad moment, and we hope that you're doing okay in this terrible time. We have fun on our show, as do the Shout It Out Loud guys. It's a break from the realities of life, but sometimes this rock and roll fantasy world that we try to live in is interrupted by real life, and obviously this kind of tragedy sobers you up. It makes you realize what's important in life. So hug that loved one. Keep them close to you. Don't wait to tell them that you love them. Say what you got to say while you have time to say it. But we're going to move forward with our show, and we really appreciate everybody listening. And last week's episode on Jeff Downs was very popular. We appreciate that, and we're hopeful that you're going to download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, be it Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Good Pods, anywhere you get them. And if you think about it, if you want to give us a positive review, that's just a huge help. We really appreciate it. It helps us find more rock and roll fans like you. And if we get wind of it, if we find it, we might just read it on the air. But this week, we're going to turn our attention to our interview with Carl Palmer. And I got to tell you, he was a very generous man, generous of spirit, generous with his time, a funny guy. Relive some stories from really the Asia days as we're focused on the Asia box set coming out on June 10th. And it's not just a box set. You can just get the CDs. You can, I think, just get the ELPs. But if you want the DVD and you want all the beautiful little knickknacks and goodies and things like that, you've got to get the deluxe box set. And if you're an Asia fan, trust me, you're going to want to. It's beautiful. It has all sorts of little treasures in it, be it photos of the band, a colorful booklet, reprints of the tickets. You got an Asia pin in there, all sorts of little pieces, some posters, some new original Roger Dean artwork, everything that makes Asia Asia. Talking about that special night, December 6th, the Budokan in Tokyo, Japan, where they broadcast it all around the world. And he talks a little bit about the documentary leading up to it, where MTV came and visited him in the Canary Islands, talking a lot about John Wetton and what he meant to him and what he was going through at the time, because John wasn't there in Tokyo. Of course, it was Greg Lake filling in for him just 6 weeks before the show. Greg Lake came on and really, honestly, did an amazing job. And we'll talk about that on the show. But he's got more Asia news for later in the year coming up. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it here. For all you Asia and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Emerson, Lake and Powell, 3, Kango, Carl Palmer's ELP legacy, however you've enjoyed Carl Palmer's music over the year, I think that you'll like our interview with Carl Palmer here on The Wolf. First of all, just welcome to the Ugly American Werewolf in London show. We are 2 huge Asia fans, and it's an honor to have you on, Carl.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be with you both.
And we're going to get into this big, beautiful box set that Sharon at Publicity Connection was happy enough to give me when I told her I was going to be interviewing you today, so I could.
Yes,
it's beautiful, Carl. It's amazing. But we want to set the stage first before we get to December of 1983. Talk about the build-up a bit. I mean, this is the 40th anniversary of the original Asia album, which sold over 4 million in the U.S. and is one of our very favorites. You know, famously, the first song that you all wrote together was Time Again, one on which you have a co-write. What was kind of the feeling in the room after you laid that one down? Was there kind of a sense of, yes, I think this is going to work out here?
No, I can't actually tell you. It's like 40 years ago, and I can't remember what happened in the studio 40 years ago. I'll be very honest with you.
Fair enough.
But we'll talk about the box set. I'll tell you about that. So that box set is actually, next year is the actual celebration for that, theoretically. And it was at the Budokan. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you all about that moment in time, because I do remember that, writing a song and writing a piece and what happened in the studio. Really, the hours you spend in the studio, believe me, they just wash on by. But this was a particular concert that was hooked up with MTV and probably one of the very first satellite broadcasts of its type. Now, I know they've done sports events in the past, but to have a rock group playing in an arena like the Budokan and being linked to MTV, quite a big deal at the time. And we have to thank David Geffen for that. Absolutely. David Geffen was the one that came up with the idea, and off we went. So as you probably know, that satellite time is incredibly expensive.
Yes.
And we had to make sure that this was right. We had a couple of things going against us. John Wetton, which I'm sure you want to talk about, wasn't very well.
Right.
And as you know, he was an alcoholic, a great friend of mine, one of the dearest men in the world, loved him madly. But he couldn't take the pressure, and it had got too much for him.
Okay.
So we were at a stage now where we'd signed contracts, and we couldn't not do this broadcast, and MTV had started advertising, so we had to move forward. So step into the frame, and Mr. John Kolodner. So John Kolodner was David Geffen's right-hand man. I know you know the man. He's been involved with many bands like Aerosmith. He put them back together again way back in the day. Anyway, John Kolodner mentioned Greg Lake. Now, everybody thinks I mentioned Greg Lake, but no, I didn't. It came from John Kolodner. Greg did an excellent job. He had the music for about 3 or 4 days at home.
Okay.
He obviously learnt the chords and did whatever. Then we rehearsed with him in a studio in London. And then we went to Japan. And this is this is quite interesting. Mm-hmm. We went down to the Kyushu Islands and we rehearsed in a Yamaha holiday camp. When I say Yamaha holiday camp, I mean, everything was stamped with the word Yamaha. Even when I took a shower in the morning, I looked up and it said Yamaha. But anyway, it was a great experience. Greg did a great job. The broadcast was impeccable. And if you get a chance to play the DVD in that box, you'll see that it was an amazing show. And Greg, as I said, did a great job. The sound was perfect. We never really knew how good the whole deal was until about a day or two after we listened to some of the music stems. We listened to the audio, and that was really good. We could not believe it. There wasn't a glitch. It went through to MTV. MTV dealt with it at their end like you wouldn't believe. And we were so proud of it. And as I say, Greg did a great job. And that was a highlight of Aisha's tour, of Aisha's career in a way, along with the first album. So that's where we are with that one. And it was great to play the Budokan. As you know, there's been many great albums at the Budokan. Peter Frampton, I think, Chem's Alive, was that there? Or was it Cheap Trick? I know there's been a few. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cheap Trick. No, Frampton not, but Cheap Trick for sure. Anyway, great feeling in that arena. And it was a moment in time we pulled off. I mean, we just didn't know it was going to work well. So that was down to David Geffen, and I thank him today. Thank you for that.
There was a story that I heard that you guys actually recorded 2 takes of that, maybe just in case the satellite was a little wonky that day. Is that true?
No, I'll tell you what actually happened there. We did a week with Greg in the Yamaha camp. Then we had about 2 days with all the technicians at the Budokan, the satellite technicians. It was a bit like Cape Canaveral there, to be honest with you, the way these guys were setting it up. And we ran through everything, and nothing seemed to go wrong, to tell you the truth. Nothing seemed to go wrong.
Amazing.
And we played a couple of tunes, and they checked with America. They went through that, whatever you have to do. And everything seemed to be okay. And that was it. After a couple of days of just tweaking stuff, that was it. We never ran the whole set even. We then came back, did a sound check on the day of the concert, did a sound check for them, did a sound check for us, because we're still using monitors. People weren't using in-ears at that time. Mm-hmm. And we hit the show, and that was it. Done. So really, there was we didn't record it twice. I don't think we could. I don't think nerves would have let us record it twice. It was too. It was too much, to be honest with you.
Understand.
But no, had a great time doing it, and as I say, technology worked for us. I mean, what a great thing to do! Actually, just think of what could have gone wrong there. You could have lost the picture into MTV. You could have lost it across America. This could have been a terrible problem with the sound. It could have been delayed sound. It could have been out of sync. I mean, there's all of this to go on, You know what it's like when you've watched a boxing match, satellite years ago, way back in the 70s or whatever. I watched Muhammad Ali fight a few times, and I used to think to myself, wow, is that a bit slow? And of course, things did happen, but we managed to crack it, and thank God we did. And the product that you've got there, designed by Roger Dean, as always, there is a CD in there of the recording, plus vinyls. Yeah, there's a vinyl in there.
The vinyls are so nice, I don't even want to play them, Carl. I mean, it's beautiful white and yellow vinyl. I just don't want to scratch them.
I wouldn't even play it. I don't know why people like vinyl so much, but there you go. Call me old-fashioned. Anyway, it's great. There's a nice badge in there also. I'll tell you what is in there that is really good. We managed to get reproductions of the ticket stubs that were used on that day, along with the poster. So all of that works well. And what's happened is that we've got invited back. It won't be a satellite broadcast to MTV because they don't play music anymore, as you well know. Right. But we've been invited back to do the same show. We might add a new song here and there next year. So I don't know whether it will be the Budokan, but it's on the cards.
And any plans to record that show?
I don't know where it will be yet. We've just talked about it. I mean, to tell you the truth, Asia has a great standing in Japan.
Sure.
And even though the band has changed, we don't have John Wetton anymore. We don't have Steve Howe in there. It's kind of different. But, we got Billy Sherwood on bass, who's been with us since 2017, 18, when we supported Journey in America. And he's done a great job. And now we've got Mark Bonilla on lead vocals and lead guitar. He's got a similar timbre to his voice that Greg Lake had. And I think it's going to work out well. I'll tell you what is ironic, though, which I'd like to bring to your attention. It is very, very weird that when Greg left King Crimson, John Wetton replaced him in King Crimson.
That's right.
And when John Wetton left Asia, Greg Lake replaced John Wetton. So it's incredible. Musical chairs.
Indeed.
In your opinion, could anyone else have come in for Wetton except for Lake at that point in time?
I had no idea. I didn't even think of Greg, as I mentioned to you earlier. So I just don't know. I don't know who would have done it, but what a great choice. Greg's voice is slightly lower. I would say that John Wetton's voice is extremely good, radio friendly. I mean, absolutely. But both of them sound very, very English, and that's what had to be that was the call of the day. Except, what did happen? There was a little sort of altercation or thing that went on there. We did The Smile Has Left Your Eyes, and it's a great sort of piano and vocal song, no drums, nothing else. It's really very nice. Anyway, Greg said he couldn't sing it in the key that John Wetton sang it in. So Jeff Downs learnt it in the lower key. It's always going to be lower. It's not going to go high. Right. And he learnt it in the lower key, and that was it. And we did it rehearsals, and that was it. Anyway, come the evening of the show, of the satellite broadcast, Jeff completely forgot and played it in the original key. To this day, Greg Lake never said a word.
Wow. Well, he's a pro. He's a pro.
He's a lovely man, and I miss him dearly, as I do Keith.
I have no doubt. And another one of the treasures you mentioned, yes, reprinted tickets, some great photos of you guys, some great Roger Dean posters and things in there. But they've got this beautiful 40-page booklet, which kind of outlines all of your equipment and all that kind of thing. And it told a story. You mentioned that MTV's invited you back to do it again. And I guess I'd not known this, but in the book, it says that before We Lost John in 2016, there were talks about bringing Asia back to do the original set list, but this time with John in the band. Was it something that he regretted not being a part of later, because it was such a big part of your legacy now to do this amazing thing broadcast around the world that no one had ever done before?
Right. Well, you have to understand that, John always thought of Asia as his band. It happened very late in John's life, where he finally got the success that he deserved as a writer, as a performer. Mm-hmm. There was no way that he could cope with the situation at the time. And obviously, to be able to redo something like a satellite broadcast, it's quite a hard call, actually. That's really not going to happen. Another concert to celebrate the anniversary, maybe in the Budokan. It won't be with MTV because they're not involved in music, as I said, and it wouldn't be a satellite broadcast, I wouldn't think. But John wanted to do it because the last 13, 14 years of his life, he was absolutely clean. I mean, this guy completely turned his life down from sleeping on park benches to actually being as straight as you can ever imagine. And his voice was better. His voice had got better at the end. I mean, this is, I've always, with bass players, I never really listen to a lot of what bass players play, because I play and I expect them to follow me, Okay. I'm a bit arrogant like that, I've got two really good feet, and I say, come on, guy, just step up and, take the challenge here, And I can usually get most bass players to speed up. And going into a chorus, I like to edge it in just a little bit, I could get Greg to speed up. I could get most people to move John Wetton was like the Rock of Gibraltar.
Really?
You could not move him. And we used to laugh and he used to drive me nuts. But for some unknown reason, he had this internal metronome. He was unbelievable. And as I say, I missed him dearly, but he was absolutely great. A great bass player, underrated, I personally think. He didn't play a lot of frills and trills, which he could do. And if I would ask him, come on, John, fill this out, time again, like you mentioned, come on, play a bit in there, he would do it. But for some unknown reason, he had this kind of almost Paul McCartney thing. The bass had to play the meat and potatoes, the root note to the chord, and maybe the odd passing note, and that was it. And that was John's philosophy. But he could play well. To be in King Crimson, he would have to play well.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
One question I did want to ask you, Carl, is you went from a three-piece in Emerson, Lake and Palmer to Asia. Did your drumming, did it change at all? And how was that dynamic different? I was always curious about that.
I've been asked that question many times, and it's a good question. Asia was put together because of necessity, if the truth was really known.
Okay.
To understand that by the time you got to the end of the 70s, American radio was not like it was in the past. American radio was an art form, and you could get anything played on American radio, and it was unbelievable. And English musicians used to just talk about, wow, over there you can get a prog track played in drive time, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Obviously, and that to us was, unbelievable. I mean, it was difficult to do that in the 70s here in UK, but in America you could. At the end of the 70s, all of that stopped. It all went corporate. And, DJs were told what they could say. Record companies would even come to artists and say, look, make every second line of your chorus rhyme. Your intro can't be more than 20 seconds because the DJs can't talk longer than that. And we used to say, look, if you know all of that, why don't you record and write the stuff yourself? You do it. You do it. So Asia was a little bit of a necessity. We had to do things like Time Again, Wildest Dreams. We had to try and get some prog stuff in there, but we had to condense it. We had to make that 15, 20-minute piece. Possibly we might be able to get to 6 minutes if we're lucky. And that's the only way we could get that to survive. Now, we had the pop tunes because Geffen wanted radio play. Emerson, Lake and Palmer had its commercial tunes like Lucky Man from the beginning, Still You Turn Me On. So this is not something that's new. All bands have done this. You get the out and out prog bands like Early Dream Theater never had any songs like that. And I think they're a great band, by the way, but I'm just saying that, Emerson, Lake and Palmer just wasn't a prog band. And Asia realized that now we're in the 80s. We still need that one song, whether it be Owner of a Lonely Heart or Lucky Man or Heat of the Moment, and we need some depth to the album. We've got to have both because that's what we do. So for me, yes, it was a radical change like it was for everyone else. But you know something, if a tune's good, I'll play 4 on the floor. I'm ready. I'll do a Mick Fleetwood anytime you're ready. If the song's there, if it's not, then I always say, and that was my lead role really with ELP. I mean, I'll be honest with you that there was one person that Greg and Keith trusted implicitly, and that was me. And if one of them wrote something, and they wrote more than me, as both of you well know, if I, made a comment, it was taken unbelievably seriously. And I had to be very careful how many times I voiced my opinion because I know it would sink in there deep. And, and I tried to get it right because, I was, the referee in a way, to what was going on. And it was a great experience. And like with Asia, it was a similar kind of thing. Not that I refereed anything or did anything like that, but with Asia, we had a lot more sort of not maturity in writing songs, but there was more possibilities. Because I didn't write songs in ELP, nor did Keith. Greg only did. But in Asia, you had Steve Howe, who wrote some songs. You had Jeff coming from the Buggles, who wrote songs. And John Wetton, who was one of the greatest lead line writers, for a song, top line melody writer ever, ever. So, I was ready to listen to whatever came forward. Heat of the Moment, just so you guys know, was originally a country and western track. And it was in 3/4, and it sounded really weird, but that's how John had written it. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning we recorded it. It was the last thing of the day. And John was very clever, very clever. He knew that if he did it early in the day, we'd all overplay. We'd all be like flashing around doing whatever, especially me, because he knew me well. So we did this at 2:00 in the morning. And I have to say to you, it wasn't a country and western song then, and it isn't now, and it was never recorded that way. It became an out-and-out pop song. And I think it's probably about the second take we got it. The vocals were two or three, but the second take for the backing, for the back bass play. Basically, we record the bass guitar and drums and rhythm guitar, and then always overdub keyboards and backing vocals and lead vocals. So that's how that happened.
Well, the other thing that changed in a big way in the early 80s, it wasn't just radio was changing, but suddenly, at least in the United States, there's this thing called MTV, right? And now Geffen is investing in making your videos, getting Godly and Cream to come in and make those first videos. The Don't Cry video from Alpha is epic. It cost, 6 figures back in the day. What did you feel about that? I mean, you made concert films with ELP, but they'd never done these videos where you actually kind of had to act or play to the camera. What was your feeling?
Yeah. They did, though, didn't they? Don't Cry. We're like in the desert, chopping my way through some jungle,
Yeah.
It was a bit monkeys, but, we did it. Look, at the time, that was the media, that was the force you had to use to get your stuff played. And you had to have a video that meant something. They weren't, most of Godly and Cream stuff I thought was excellent. Yes. Only Time Will Tell, Heat of the Moment, Don't Cry, maybe Indiana Jones, it was like.
Yes.
We didn't really need that. But I enjoyed working with them. They were really professional. They knew exactly what they wanted, and you couldn't really set them off the track. They had a clear vision, and they were usually right every time, I have to say. And Geffen, he just wanted to use them, and they were English guys, so we got on well. So the whole thing just clicked.
Yeah, and that definitely helped put you over the top in the United States, because at that point in time, MTV was everything.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what was very, very weird. We came over to America with our first album, and we were rehearsing in a place called Lidditz, Pennsylvania. It's where the Clare Brothers are. They're the big sound company over there that lots of people use, and Yes used them, and Aisha used them, and I don't think ELP ever used them, probably because Yes had used them. But anyway, I remember being in Lidditz, and there's the 3 of us, because Steve would never go out in the sunshine, but there was the 3 of us, John Wetton, Jeff and myself, sitting by the pool, and we're talking. And there's a couple of girls, young ladies by the pool, and they've got their Walkmans. It was the day of the Walkman, and we could hear them playing the Aisha album, because it was on cassette, obviously. And we're just cracking up because they had no idea what we looked like. And that was one of those great moments where you can hear people, see them enjoying the music, and then you wait for the, what are they going to say? They're going to talk? But, no, they played it back to back. It was lovely. Really enjoyed that.
Nice. Well, for years, I feel like, because in Dave Gallant's book, Heat of the Moment, about your band, Jeff kind of said, although it was a financial success, Asia and the tour of Japan, ultimately it didn't work out with Greg Lake. And of course you came back, got John back in the band, but then that led to Steve's departure. But now it just seems like this is something we need to celebrate. I mean, bouncing it off satellites all over the stratosphere to make this happen, broadcasting on 200 plus channels on Westwood One radio. And like you said, it sounded amazing. Yeah. Why is this the right time to finally release this special, beautiful, amazing collector's edition box set of this?
Well, as I said, the band is playing this year, and we've decided to try and sort of come back and celebrate the very first album, this is the anniversary this year.
Yes.
We've seemed very, very happy and settled with Mark Vanilla being on lead vocals and lead guitar. And it just seemed right that whatever we've got there that we can use right now, because look, the world's not waiting for a new Aisha album. Let's be very honest about that. The world is not waiting for a new Aisha album. But if we can reestablish what we did in the past and how great it was, maybe we can build the tour de force up again and get to that stage. So that's really the idea here. So this is part of that sort of longer plan. Let's get this year out the way with this tour. Let's get everything kind of settled in there with Mark. Let's go into next year with the box set and possibly play the box set in America as well as Japan and maybe in Europe. And then, slide in slowly. I don't think it's anything you can rush these days. As I said, the world's not waiting for an Asia album, but the world could be waiting for us to remind them of what we did do once when it was super cool and super successful.
Well, first of all, Carl, the two of us are waiting for a new Asia album. So if you wanted to do that, please go ahead. The other thing that you guys released recently was the live box set, which is incredible. We actually did a whole review of it on our show. Love that. Love the artwork. Love everything about it. Are there any plans for any more of that? Maybe a volume 2?
Well, I don't think there's any plans for any more at the moment. As you know, we're with BMG, who I've always wanted Asia to be with because the ELP catalogue is with BMG as well. There's no plans at the moment, but that's not to say on this up and coming tour, we might consider record. We record live every night anyway, but it's from the desk. We don't bring in a separate unit. So we will just sort of see where we are. But who knows? Who knows what can happen? I'm not sure. As I say, we've not really sat in the rehearsal room with Mark yet. We've only talked, we've discussed, had a few Zoom calls and this and that. And let's see where we can take it. And I'm sure there's a lot more to come than what I can tell you at the moment.
Fair enough. Well, it's great. Not only on the DVD do you have the amazing concert, but there was a Road to Budokan documentary leading up to it. And it showed you on Tenerife, staying in shape and, with your infant daughter on your leg saying, boy, I hope she becomes a lawyer one day that's going to save me some fees. And being able to see Steve with his kids. And of course, Virgil's not with us anymore. It seems like it was an amazing time in your lives. And that's not something MTV reran a whole lot. So I think just not only being able to see the show, but to see that documentary, to see you guys in your element and getting ready for the show is something really special. Do you remember them coming to see you in the Canary Islands?
Yeah, I lived in the Canary Islands for 23 years, and I had a great time. I've been back in England since 2004. Yes, I remember the MTV crew coming over and they had a couple of days off in the hotel and I took them around. And then we went up the mountains. I rode my bike. I went and practiced my snare drum up there, whatever. And we had a great time. And to be honest with you, it is one of those moments that you don't forget, to tell you the truth, mainly because it was spread over maybe 4 or 5 days they were with me. It was extremely exciting. And I think everyone came off well in that DVD. And one thing which is interesting is that my daughter actually is a lawyer. She ended up being a lawyer. She fulfilled the dream.
You manifested that. Yes, well done.
Yeah. She's never done any work for me. She tells me she's too expensive. Don't bother, Dad. I'll find you someone else. But she is a lawyer, yeah.
Good stuff.
Excellent. The U.S. tour, any dates, cities confirmed? How's that working?
Yeah, we do. We have cities confirmed, but not a routing of the cities. We don't know exactly what order. I've got some of them here, but I don't want to mention them because people get, hey, what date,
Right.
Yes, there's going to be about 20, just over 20 dates. There's going to be X amount of those concerts with Alan Parsons.
Oh, wow.
So there's Alan Parsons. Yeah, Alan Parsons and Asia. And I believe we're going to start the end of July and we pick up dates with Alan round about August the 6th. And that's basically sort of how that works. Asia's been out with Alan before on a previous tour way back, not in the day, but whenever it was, 2017. I think we played some dates with him, or 16 or whenever. And I played with Alan with my band, Carl Palmer's ELP Legacy, in February this year in Florida.
Oh, okay.
So there's always been a bit of a relationship there between us. So that should be pretty good. And Asia will do, we'll do all the dates that you have to do in the summer, really, And as I said, there'll be between 6 to 8 with Alan, I think. at the moment. That they're still, I mean, I'm amazed these days. I always thought you had to put tickets on sale early. You know, we're going out there in August and we're at the end of May now, and there's no tickets on sale. So it's very weird how things have changed over the years, you know.
Yeah, no, and so I have seen you play a couple times with Asia. Saw you when you first got together on your first tour back together, 2006, 2007 in Chicago. But I saw you open for Journey right after you lost John. And I called Jackson right after the show to say, look, they were great. It was good to see them. But Carl Palmer is in great shape. He's still killing it on the drums, and he's taking care of himself. It's physically demanding to be a drummer, Carl. I mean, I know you've gone vegan at some point. What do you do to stay in such great shape?
That's why I'm not on camera, because I'm over 250 pounds right now. No, I'm teasing.
I don't believe that.
No, I hate being on camera. What do I do? Well, yeah, I was a vegan for about 13 years. I've started eating, I wouldn't eat anything that had a face, in other words, you know, no dairy, nothing. I've started eating fish. I've had to start eating. I needed the omega-3. My joints getting a little bit stiff. And basically I don't drink very much. I maybe drink once a week. I've never smoked. I exercise with those resistance bands, those yoga resistance bands, instead of weights, because weights are just too hard on the muscles, I find. You know, with a weight, you've either got to pick it up or not. With a resistant band, you can stretch it as far as you want and say, hey, didn't I do well? And let go of it. You know, you can't do that with a weight, you know, with weights. So I'm pretty careful about what I do. I run. I've got a treadmill here at the back of me. I'm in my sort of office at the moment. And generally, I've just always taken good care of myself. Not for any particular reason, except the fact I want to carry on working as long as I possibly can. I mean, I'm 72 now, but I could go another 10 years if I really take care. And, you know, that's all I'm interested in, is playing drums. That's all I'm interested in. And it's been that way for years. And I want to keep it as much as I possibly can. The pandemic nearly killed me. I mean, I was rehearsing 4 or 5 days a week at home here, but you know, not being able to go out and play is just really ruined me. I'll tell you what it's like. You can, a band or an individual can rehearse all they want at home, and you can get really good on your practice pad or on your drum, whatever you do, and you learn all your tricks and look great and whatever. Do you know something? When you go out and put it in front of an audience, it sometimes doesn't happen like it happened downstairs in your rehearsal room.
Right.
For some unknown reason, you've got to do it in front of people. The minute you can do it in front of people and pull it off, it's in the system. It's in the muscle memory. You're there. But, you know, you have to do that. And all performers need that. It's the only way you can survive, really. So I'm looking forward. Well, I've been touring since last November. I did my first tour last November, 2021 in America. We did about 15 concerts. I did another tour this year in February. I did of America, not so many dates, and then I did the UK tour last month, April. So yeah, no, I'm match fit now. I'm up and running. I'm in good shape. I just got to be careful not to eat too much. That's all.
Well, here's hoping you're going to play another 10 years or 20 years or however long that you want to continue, Carl.
Yeah.
You've been a great influence on a lot of people, and we love your music, and we can't wait to see you live and see what you guys are going to release next.
Thank you. Well, I thank you both for the interview. It's always a great pleasure. And it's nothing personal that I'm not on camera. It's just that I didn't get my hair done today, and I'd like you to see me at my very best.
We call it the Ugly American Werewolf in London for a reason, Carl. We're a radio show, not a TV show, okay? No worries there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You're welcome anytime. Anytime you want to talk the tour, you want to talk the next release, you're welcome anytime, Carl. We'd love to have you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that.
Thank you kindly, sir. We're big
You're
fans.
more than welcome.
Have a wonderful afternoon, and good luck this summer on tour.
Yeah, come and see us if you can, please.
Yeah, as soon as those dates go up, we'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Hi, I'm Deborah Bonham.
And I am the Irish werewolf in England, Peter Bullock.
And you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London.
Well, it's great to have Carl on the show. What a nice man.
Absolutely.
And when we were in our dorm room jamming out to Asia 30 years ago, Jackson, would you have said, one day we're going to have Carl and Jeff Downs on our radio show within a week of each other?
I think probably the conversation went more like, man, if we could talk to those people, we want to know this, and this. And no, absolutely not. It's if you would have tapped me on the shoulder then and said that night, oh yeah, by the way, you will be talking. No, there's no way. That was awesome. I was definitely starstruck. Woo!
He's had such an amazing legacy. I mean, before he was in ELP, he was in, the Crazy World of Arthur Brown with "I Am the God of Hellfire." He was on that record. And that was his first tour of America in like 1968 when he was a teenager. And then he got a call from I think it was from Greg Lake, to say, well, let's put this 3-piece together with my buddy Keith. And thank goodness.
And that was the interesting part too. When we were talking about how his drumming style changed, I knew him from Asia and then got into ELP later.
Right.
And you think, wow, he was really, I don't want to say holding himself back in Asia, but definitely playing to the room. And like he said, he can play 4 on the floor if that's what you need from him. But just definitely a guy who he understands exactly what you need and will give you that. You want me to show off? No problem.
Yeah, and he's like, we've got 3 songwriters in the room, right? Howe is an open channel. He's written all sorts of things. Wetton was the lead singer-songwriter of the band, but Jeff Downs co-wrote most all the hits with him, basically wrote the whole second album together. So he's like, okay, guys, tell me what you need, and we'll go do it. And it was the same once they got back together for the reunion albums, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is great that they've put this box set out now, because I think like for years it was always like some kind of like janky bootleg that you could get. Somebody had recorded it originally. Right. So now to have it in all of its, glory with the, you were talking about the ticket stubs and the photos and the Road to Budokan documentary. Yeah, that's definitely a treat for fans.
Yeah, and it was almost treated as the redheaded stepchild of Asia lore, right? It was this amazing moment in history. And honestly, for cable TV and for MTV, it's an enormous deal. We can't overestimate how big a deal. Now it's like you want to do satellite live, it's nothing. It's not that big of a deal. They can do it for anything, anywhere. But back then that was huge. But because it was with Greg Lake and it didn't sound quite right, and they did have to tune down a little bit. And when it does, here comes the feeling, well, gosh, some of those high notes were at the high part of John's register, which is higher than Greg's, right? So you could get it on VHS, and I think you could eventually get it on Laserdisc, but they never really gave it a proper CD release or an album release. They never did it on DVD. And I'll admit, and I think I've said it on one of our episodes, that I did not love the way Greg sounded in the band because he wasn't John Wetton. He just wasn't right. But this moment in time absolutely deserves this deluxe treatment. And I'm so glad that I get to enjoy it.
Absolutely. And just the thought of him coming in at last minute, it just speaks to how great of a musician he was, that he looked very relaxed on stage.
He did.
Like Carl mentioned, the song's in the wrong key, but you know what? I got this. Don't worry about it. I'll do it like a pro. Yeah, just a testament to how much of a professional he was. I don't think. Carl said he didn't really know, but I don't think anybody else could have done it as well, as quickly as Greg Lake.
I think you're right about that, and it's interesting to say that for him to say that it wasn't his idea, because everyone kind of assumes that. John Kalodner, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame A&R man of Geffen, he made the suggestion. Then Carl calls him, and Greg's like, I don't think so. No, because it had been 5 years since he was, on stage with Carl. And then not only did Kalodner have to get on to cajole him, but David Geffen himself reached out to Greg to say, hey, we need somebody why don't you just come and give it a shot? Just give it a chance, right? Which is funny just to think about how big a deal David Geffen is now. He might be on the phone with Brad Pitt to try to get him into a movie or something like that. But back then it's like, please, Greg, come do these 3 shows in Japan with the biggest band on my label right now.
Well, yeah. Could you imagine that? They must have had this booked, and then Wetton can't do it. And it's like, we can't not do this concert. It's huge.
Trains in motion.
Sold out. Correct. Yeah, so to get that done, yeah, I'm sure Geffen was, okay, let me get on this, let me do this. I'll talk him into it because yeah, we can't let this thing go. We can't not do it.
And MTV had put so much promotion and money into it.
Right.
Not to mention Westwood One. You're broadcasting to 250 radio stations. They're doing everything they can do, to make sure it goes off. They had David Mallet directing the thing, which is kind of a big deal, My regret on that short time we had with him was we didn't really get to talk about the stage. The Alpha Tour had that amazing A-frame stage, and as the drummer, Carl's used to being a couple of heads above everybody, right? Yeah. But to accommodate the 28 keyboards of Jeff Downs or whatever it was, he had to be above him. And I just wonder, what's that like to have this guy running around behind you and spotlights, going over your head back there? That's just got to be a little different. It's got to throw you off a little bit.
And could you imagine too, like the road crew, like you want to do what in Japan? Right. You want to take 28 keyboards. Okay, here we go. Yeah, to get it set up every night. Yeah, that is weird too because I've never seen a setup like that. You're right. The drummer is always on top. I mean, sometimes like in different stages, the lead singer will get up and like there's a catwalk or something. But to have somebody up there the whole time, it has to be a little disconcerting. Yeah, you're right with the spotlights and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, AC/DC, we'll have Angus and Brian can run up above the drum riser if they want. Obviously, in Iron Maiden, Bruce has basically got a track up there that he runs around on for different reasons. But to have your keyboard player, and he had to have like 4 different mics because he is the kind of main backup singer of Asia. So every time he was at a different station, he had to pull the mic in front of his face. Really amazing moment in time.
Amazing that it all went together. And the other thing too that we I think we touched on this in one of our earlier episodes, but the whole thing was this first super group, right? Mm-hmm. So you were going to get somebody random in there that wouldn't have fit the business model. So to have Greg Lake come in, oh wait a minute, yeah, ELP, okay, yeah, he fits, no problem. I think that would have been weird if they had somebody who could sing, but it was like I've never heard of this guy before.
Right? Who's he? And that was before the days. Now it's not that surprising. I shouldn't say it's not a big deal. But a lot of people, Yes included, and Judas Priest included, they will go out and get someone from a tribute band who sounds exactly, who makes their living sounding exactly like that singer. We didn't have people like that back then. Yes, people change groups, but you didn't change the singer because that just changes the essentialness of the sound of the band, right? So it was a big deal. But to do it in 6 weeks... to understand, to learn all the bass parts, to learn the keys, to learn the lyrics, and then how to sing them. Look, my hat's off to Greg Lake. I've given him a little stick for not sounding right. It's not his fault that his voice isn't exactly like John Wetton's. He came in and did an amazing job.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It did kind of get maligned, and I think we've even talked about that. But you're right. It did happen. And it was a huge deal, and I'm glad they put this thing out. You've got a copy of it in front of you there. It just looks gorgeous. Beautiful. And if you're a fan and you're going to spend the money on it, you're going to get your money's worth out of this thing. It is just over the top.
Well, that wraps up show number 80 of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock podcast. Very special thanks to Mr. Carl Palmer, a funny guy, a great guy, a legendary drummer and musician who's been doing this for over 50 years and is continuing his legacy by taking Asia out on the road later this year to celebrate the 40th anniversary of that eponymous first album, which contained hits like Heat of the Moment, Only Time Will Tell, Soul Survivor, Here Comes the Feeling, Time Again. I think the whole album is fantastic. And as much as they were rushed on the second album, I think it sounds good right after. Listening to Asia, you can listen to Alpha right after, back to back. Get yourself an hour and a half of some killer pop, rock, prog tunes. The best pop, rock, prog album of all time, in my humble opinion. And I want to encourage you, if you're Asia fans, you've got to go out and get the Asia and Asia box set. Out Friday, June 10th. It's about $100, but you get so much in it. You can just get the CDs of the show. You can just get the LPs of the show. But if you get the box set, you get both the CDs and the LPs and an amazing booklet, lots of little trinkets, lots of artwork, and the DVD of the original show, with the introduction by Mark Goodman of MTV. And it just captures an amazing moment in time. The stage was beautiful. It was cool as hell. The big A-frame with Jeff's riser above Carl's riser with his many, many keyboards. And of course, Jeff talked a little bit about that on episode 79 when we had him on. Not only talking about Asia, but talking about the Yes Closer to the Edge tour, which as this show comes out is just a week away. And I'm going to see them June 21st at Royal Albert Hall. So thank you to Carl, thank you to Jeff, and thank you for all you Asia fans for listening to our show. Now, as usual, guys, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? Hey, you got to let us know. You can tweet us or DM us at ugly_werewolf or at ActionJack72. And we encourage you to let us know the bands, the DVDs, the records, the concerts that you would like us to do on the show. And if you like that Asia box set or you're curious about it, you can go to our YouTube page, go to the Ugly American Werewolf in London YouTube page where I do an unboxing of that box set. It's about a 5.5-minute video and it kind of shows you what all you get. I promise you, you won't be disappointed in the quality if you pick that up. You can get it at Burning Shed. It's out by BMG Distribution. Now, next week, we're going to have yet another fantastic guest on the show. And actually, someone who was in Asia for a stretch. So that's right, we're going to have 3 members of Asia on the show in as many weeks. Not a founding member, so no, it's not Steve Howe. But Steve, if you're listening, we do want you to be on the show one day when you've got the opportunity. No, it's someone who had a brief stint in there, but you probably know him better from his work in other bands. I'm not going to reveal it to you right now. You're going to have to tune in and download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to find out who next week's guest is. But it's a great show, the great conversation with another legendary musician. So until then, all you rock and rollers and all you Asia fans all around the world, be cool and stay safe.